Movie reviews. Oscar season is officially here. Mank, which is one of the most hyped movies of the year, at least for Oscar buzz, has finally hit Netflix, available to pretty much everyone. Let's talk about it. So the plot essentially follows Herman J. Mankiewicz, which is the screenwriter for the classic Orson Welles movie Citizen Kane. Now, you don't need to see Citizen Kane in order to appreciate this movie, however, I do think it would help quite a bit. This movie ultimately follows him as he works with Orson Welles and tells pretty much a biopic about his life getting to that point, writing Citizen Kane, and all the steps and little things and people he met along the way that ultimately inspired one of the greatest movies of all time. The interesting thing about this movie is that it doesn't really focus a lot on Citizen Kane itself or Orson Welles, but more so Mank, as they call him in the movie, and ultimately his life as a screenwriter in Hollywood. You have Gary Oldman playing the title character, directed by David Fincher, and this is one of the most Oscar-baity movies you could possibly find. That, and this is just old Hollywood type movie trying to just pull in cinephiles to say, look at this, old school Hollywood, movies about movies, isn't this cool? But the thing is, like, that's not really a bad thing, at least in my opinion. This movie's a lot of fun. That's pretty much the bottom line. Yes, it's Oscar baity. Yes, it's just trying to reach and grab you in to say, look at us talk about old Hollywood, but it's so much fun doing that. Gary Oldman does a fantastic performance, and I think he's pretty much just at this point in his career where he's just going to continue to take on these roles that are going to get Oscar buzz, and he's just going to get nomination after nomination. Same thing with David Fincher. With this movie, isn't really like the typical movies he does. He's the type of director that has just done so much good work up until this point that I feel like anything he touches, people are going to be paying attention to, and it's going to be worth talking about. Some other people to talk about: Amanda Seyfried is in this movie. She does a fantastic performance that is getting a lot of Oscar buzz right now, and I would say is pretty much deserved. Lily Collins does a fantastic job. Tom Burke playing Orson Welles is a fantastic take on the character. And Trent Reznor, who is pretty much David Fincher's right-hand man for scoring all his movies. It is way different than anything Trent Reznor has done before, but I am all for this score. But the biggest pull about this movie, at least from a movie making standpoint, is it's all done in black and white, which honestly I don't think you could have made this movie without doing that. This movie feels like you're watching a movie from the 20s or 30s. That's just what it is. But to add on even to that, the style is which the screenplay is presented is just like it was in Citizen Kane. It's not a linear timeline. You kind of start at the end of the story, and then you see the bits and pieces that lead up into that, which might not sound like a huge deal, but if you know anything about Citizen Kane, that's kind of what Citizen Kane invented. It invented this idea that you didn't have to tell a story in order of the events that they happened in. And so it only makes sense that this movie appreciates that and pays a tribute to it. So stylistically, amazing. Acting, phenomenal. The score, incredible. Where does this movie fall flat? I think ultimately this movie falls flat because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of emotional pull to it. Now, the story of Citizen Kane, if you're not familiar, it's one that is just very heavily talked about, at least within the Hollywood circles. Because ultimately this character, Mank, was the screenwriter, but Orson Welles didn't want to give him credit, and Mank wrote a lot of screenplays for Hollywood in the 30s that he didn't get credit for. So when he won his first and only Oscar for this movie, he had to split it with Orson Welles, which some people debate if Orson Welles even wrote any of it. And so David Fincher, in directing this movie, pretty much takes a stand and then wants to tell the story of Mank rather than Orson Welles. And Orson Welles isn't the most universally beloved person, at least in the real world, so it's very easy to kind of view him as the antagonist of this movie. So yes, there's a lot of history that is disputed and debated, and David Fincher is essentially just picking a side and saying, like, this is what happened, which is totally fine in my opinion, because, like, anytime you get a movie like this, you need to take liberties as far as, like, just picking a side with the history. And the history in this movie is so fascinating. Seeing where Mank took his inspiration for writing Citizen Kane as far as the characters in that movie, Citizen Kane himself, you see a lot of old Hollywood, the MGM studios, and the studio execs behind all of these films. To be completely honest, even for someone like me who is very interested in this subject, a lot of it went over my head. You see well-known people like William Randolph Hearst and Upton Sinclair take place in this movie, and those aren't exactly household names anymore. So there's a lot of history, and this movie is definitely designed for someone who is actually interested in that era of Hollywood. And so I don't know if the average moviegoer is just going to jump in and really understand all the dynamics that's happening here. This movie introduces a lot of things, socially, politically, morally, and I think my biggest issue is it kind of like wants to be something, but then never actually is about anything. Ultimately, it feels like the movie's building, 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 and the ending is just kind of this soft resolve, and the emotion just didn't quite draw me in like I was hoping it would. However, I could definitely see my opinion on this changing over time because I cannot stop thinking about this movie. It's definitely one that I would just turn on and have playing in the background. So I don't really know what that means. Take it how you will. But this is the ultimate background, soothing, pleasing movie. Will it win a lot of Oscars? Absolutely. Is it going to be my favorite movie of the year? I don't think so. But it's definitely worth a watch. Like I said, it's on Netflix. It's so accessible. I think anyone who is interested in films at all should watch this. And if nothing else, there's definitely going to be a lot of Oscar buzz surrounding it. So get ahead of the game with this one. That's Mank. Have you seen it? What do you think? Let me know. Comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. And I will see you next time.